Hey, Keith. Jesus. Hey, Keith, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I heard you swear just a second ago.
Just making sure you're awake.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Historic Preservation Commission meeting. We're going to call the meeting to order for this Monday, May 20th, 2024 meeting. And we're going to begin with a roll call.
Awesome. Okay, Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Beauchamp,
Here.
Commissioner Whitten. Here. Commissioner Keller,
Here.
Vice Chair Berg.
Here. We can approve tonight's agenda if somebody would like to make a motion to do so.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
And do we have any public comments on items not on tonight's agenda? And can you please state your name and city of residence? Okay.
Andy Johnson, DAJ Design, here in Louisville. I wanted to do a quick follow-up since this wasn't an agenda item for 1234 Jefferson, what we talked about online last.
The landmark property at 1209 Main Street. So this was landmarked last year. They're coming in now for their grant request. And all of the work that's identified in the table up on the screen is identified in the historic structure assessment and relates to either preservation, restoration, or rehabilitation. So I went through those requirements. The grant request itself is for $40,000, so it's maxing out the grant. But the total project cost for all of the preservation work is $94,250. So staff is recommending approval of this resolution, which would recommend approval to City Council of this grant for up to $40,000 for the work that was outlined in that grant.
Kind of echoey.
Sorry.
It's not too loud, but it's just weird.
Okay. Anyway, happy to take any questions. And I actually don't think the applicants are present tonight. But if somebody shows up online, then please let us know.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff?
I had a question with, they had rehabilitation hazardous materials abatement. Did I miss something with that? Did they already have the test with that?
Do you mean that they already have their asbestos tested?
Yeah.
I mean, I assume, well, if it's in the assessment, which I checked, then I think that they probably would have had it tested.
Okay, maybe I just missed that portion. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Any comments from the public? And seeing none, we'll move to discussion with the commission.
I believe what they're requesting makes sense. It's a home that we landmarked without any reservation. I think it's deserving of our grant.
I think the HSA and the information in the packet showed an extensive amount of work to be done. I like that it was prioritized, by high priority work to be done, kind kind of low priority, and everything that they're asking for in this grant, relates to the preservation, the restoration. There will be work done on top of this to make this house sound and in our community for some time. Right, we landmarked it pretty recently. It's right there on Main Street, highly visible, so I think it's a good candidate for the grant.
I agree with all of that.
Looks pretty straightforward, just the way we'd like the program to work.
And I assume those numbers came from a contractor working, or, sorry, should have asked this earlier.
No, that's okay. So in this case, I'd have to look at the application again to see if I could find it, but if there aren't any separate estimates, then I would guess that they just didn't submit that, or that they came from the person who did the assessment, since it's the same person who put together the grant and the assessment project. I will say that we don't require that people actually come up with formal estimates. It's something that I try to encourage people to do when possible, but in this case, if it's not in the packet, then it probably just came from the architect or his team.
I guess it would sort out anyway as the receipts are presented to you after our approval.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify. So I think the reason that it's not a requirement is because it is a reimbursement program. So a number of these are estimates, and in some cases, I've processed some, and the HPC has approved some that come in, and the request itself is for 15, but it's inflated to 18 or something to accommodate some additional overflow. So again, it's just the reimbursement process catches a little bit of that inexact nature of it.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no more discussion, someone can make a motion.
I'll move to approve the grant funding request.
I'll second.
And we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Beaucamp.
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap.
Yes.
Commissioner Berg.
Yes.
Commissioner Whidden.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Keller.
Yes.
And Chair Haley.
Yes. All right. Our next item is probable cause for 1140 Main Street. We'll have another staff presentation.
Okay, so probable cause for 1140 Main Street. Driving me crazy. All right, just a reminder that probable causes are the way that the HPC approves grant requests for historic structure assessments. The maximum is $4,000 for residential and $9,000 for commercial. These are reimbursements, they're non-matching, and HPC uses the landmarking criteria to evaluate whether there's probable cause that the property might be landmarked. So in this case, conditions over time, we've got the 1948 assessor's card image on the left, and then the current photos on the right. So there have been some changes to the windows and the roof. But as you can see from the 1948 assessor's photos, looks like it's in really remarkably good condition from the mid-century. There is a note on, I think it's the state survey that talks about an addition on the front. It's present in the 1948 photo, but it's probably just not original to the actual original house. So this was built in 1898, making it 126 years old. It does have that national folk form that the HPC is very familiar with. However, it has also sort of a distinct appearance with its front and side gables. It's a little bit more ornate in its form than other national folk homes that HPC's reviewed. Mentioned the physical integrity is pretty strong here. And then the social significance, as you read, there's quite a bit of it, relates to coal mining for some of the early residents, but then transitions to downtown commercial history and civic life throughout the history of the building. So with that, staff recommends a finding of probable cause, which would approve a grant of up to $4,000 toward the cost of an HSA. The applicant is here and I assume has a presentation, and I'm happy for any questions that you have.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? All right.
Christine and, you're online?
I think that's a US, yeah.
Great. All right, I'm Andy Johnson with DAJ Design in Louisville.
Seems like stand away from
I'm
it,
not
that
gonna
works
say
better.
anything. I believe the owners of the home are online, and they'll probably want to chime in and say some things. But I did get a really nice opportunity to see this house. This is probably not one that I really need to talk about because this one's pretty straightforward. It is largely original. There do seem to be indications in the crawl space and basement to where maybe a little bit of additive features were brought into play. Looking forward to uncovering that. I really only did a pretty quick walkthrough. So HSA will definitely help us figure that out. But overall, it is remarkably intact. And actually structurally seems pretty sound from first glance. So I'm excited to dig into this one. Lots of things that could or could not be original, but I think we have some really good period of significance photos in the social history. Seems pretty straightforward. So happy to answer any questions. And if there are none, I'd love to turn it over to just turn it off, okay.
Hey, Christine, I'm going to allow you to talk, so to speak, and then if you want to speak, just unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks. Sorry I can't be there in person. I'm Christine Etchmeyer, and my husband Colin Blair and our 2 kids and dog live at 1140 Main Street. And I bought this house back in 2004, so we're celebrating our 20th year of ownership, and I'm really happy that we've taken the step to learn about this this opportunity to get more about the history of the house. That was one of the things that really attracted me to the house. Was I wanted to own a house that was unique and had historical value. So I really look forward to the possibility of going down this path to at least see what this house had significance was in the history of Louisville. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for the applicant? All right. Any public comments? And seeing none, we'll move back to discussion.
Again, very straightforward. I don't think there's much to discuss on this project. I think it's worthy, once again, of the HSA.
I'd agree. I had fun reading about it. The history is really rich.
Yeah.
And the home is remarkably intact. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So if we have a motion,
I'll make a motion to approve the probable cause determination for 1140 Main Street.
I'll second.
and we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Beaucamp.
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap.
Yes.
Commissioner Berg.
Yes.
Commissioner Whidden.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Keller.
Yes.
And Chair Haley.
Yes. All right. Yeah, we look forward to seeing the HSA on that and getting more information. And I think it looks like a great project, great home to add to our probable cause list. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and our next is probable cause 741 Jefferson Avenue. We'll have another staff report.
Okay, so Is this any better? Is it a little bit better? Not really.
That's a little better.
Okay, great. I'm just twisting a knob. I don't know what it does. Okay, so yes, probable cause for 741 Jefferson Avenue. So this one is literally a big building, and certainly close by and very exciting to see. So there have been some changes over time. This is an undated image here on the left. Not a lot of actually dated photos for this that they go back super far, but you can see the original form. And then up on the top right, you can see a couple of, I would say, significant changes, right? So the door has been turned into a window, and the entrance has been moved to the north. And there's also that north addition and the loss of some of the ornamentation. And so those are sort of the more major changes that have occurred over time. But then when you look from the sort of this bottom right, you can see that there's also an addition to the rear, which would be the west. But it's different, or it's subordinated and differentiated to an extent. The design is obviously sort of similar, but through this little area in the middle that sort of accommodates like a sort of a meeting room. So those are some of the main changes. This building is around 134 years old. It was built around 1890. Certainly this is a rare building in Louisville. It has this Gothic revival form. It's on a corner lot. Already discussed some of the major alterations that have occurred, but certainly a fair bit of the building still remains in the front. And the social significance here, this was the second church building built in Louisville. And it is currently it's the oldest operating church in the city today. And a lot of this ties to that English immigration history, which we do certainly hear some about, not as much as some other European ethnic groups, but that's really sort of the root of some of the oldest history for this church. So staff recommends a finding of probable cause to approve a grant of up to $9,000 toward the cost of a commercial historic structure assessment. I think at one point in the staff report it said commercial, and another it said residential. So I just want to be really clear that staff's recommending the $9,000, given the building size, but also really in a straightforward way the use of the building, right? So I'm happy to take any questions. The applicant is present as well.
Any questions for staff?
It may not matter too much, but is there an obvious way of deciding whether this is commercial or residential, since it really isn't either?
I mean, there's no like hard line here, but I think its use is what we would what we would reference, right? I mean, I think the fact that it's also a large building is kind of just an added bonus, but it's really the fact that it's used as a church. Nobody lives there, so I think commercial is like a broader.
Okay, it's non-residential.
Broader, right? Yeah, non-residential would be a great phrase if we had it, but commercial is the one we have. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just a general question on some of these single-family residence and commercial projects. On the up to $45,000 or $4,500 and the up to $9,000, it'd be interesting, kind of taking it offline, I guess, or taking it to a different point, if we could figure out what is the typical cost that ends up coming across on these assessments. Just a question I have that doesn't really pertain to what we're going to discuss tonight, but just a general question.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely something to continue talking about. I think one of the things we're doing with the grant update is asking that question exactly in case there's the need to increase these. I think in general, I've only seen one since I've started that builds at higher than 4,000, but I think that's partly or maybe in large part because that's just what, like it's actually more expensive than what we offer to actually complete some of these, especially when it includes a structural engineer review. Mm-hmm. So, which I'm sure you know. So at least on the residential side, I think that we're under serving or whatever the right phrase would be. I don't know about the commercial side, really. I would imagine it's similar, but I'd have to decide based on square footage.
Just curiosity.
Yeah.
For moving forward.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. And then we'll have the applicant, if you'd like to talk to us, and if you'll just say your name and city of residence or occupation or whatever city.
Yeah, my name's Larry Bovin. I live at, well, I will be living at 1108 Hillside Lane here in a few days, since my house burned down. But I am currently the trustee for the Methodist Church that we're requesting this grant for. As far as what I can tell you, I have reached out to a couple of firms to see if they will go ahead and do a structural assessment. There's several firms that do this work specifically, so hopefully I'll be able to get a real firm idea of how much they plan on charging for it. It really does need a structural assessment. Obviously, it's been in operation since 1890s, and that portion of the building has really had very little work on it other than exterior work and obviously some heating and electrical work over the years. But primarily the basement is what we're really looking at, is try to really see what needs to be done to shore that up and make sure that it can still continue to operate beyond the 134 years that it's been in operation to this point. And so I do want to thank all the work of staff on this, because nearly 69 pages of materials, and of course I'm really obviously looking forward to finding out what we need to do overall to keep it operating. And then also, in addition to that, of course, we operate the food bank out of that as well, and we've been operating that since 2005 out of the basement of that building. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for him? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And any public comment? I don't know if we have anyone online. All right, we'll bring this one back for discussion.
This is obviously an important historic building in Louisville. If you look at all kinds of family histories, they run through the Methodist Church. So it's a great opportunity to have this submission happen for 741 Lincoln. There were actually two addresses on the report. Was the other one the building just to the east or south? Okay. But it's being evaluated as well? No, okay.
Yes, there were two addresses in the social history report, I believe. There's the school.
The school.
Yeah, there's the school building that's right to the south, but that's not part of the approval tonight.
Oh, I see, because it was an old report about them, or?
Well, first of all, yes, it was an old report, but I think it was telling the history of the whole, because that school is associated with the church.
Okay.
It was the pastor.
Do you want to come up to that?
Oh, yeah. It was the excuse me. It was the parsonage for quite a while, and so and then converted into preschool.
School. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
you're right about the history. I mean, it goes all the way back to Welsh, who actually the congregation purchased it from Welsh for $1, so, the property.
Yeah, I feel like this is pretty straightforward. I think, to your point, just as far as it being a community hub for generations of families, the proximity and location as far as like Memory Square, and it's on a corner, like there's just a lot of prominence. It's obviously in great condition aside from the additions and stuff, which are still sensitive for what they did. So I think this is a pretty straightforward. I know we've been hoping that this would come to us at some point, so yeah, it's a big decision, and there's a lot of people involved.
For a long time, the biggest.
Sorry, yeah, we have to have a mic.
I don't want to get into all the other issues with this, but I have been working a long time with our administrative council to understand that it's really important for us to preserve this. And if this will help us get it moving in the right direction, then I really want to get it moving in that way, because like you say, it has such historic significance for our community. Obviously, it served as part of the school in Memory Square for many years as a overflow. So there's so much connection between that property and Memory Square and so many other properties around the area that I just felt really strongly that we needed to really move on this now. So thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for working on that. Any other discussion?
I agree. This one's pretty straightforward. Kind of theme of the night.
Yeah. All right, if someone wants to make a motion.
I will make a motion to approve probable cause for 741 Jefferson Avenue.
I'll second.
And we'll get a roll call, please.
Commissioner Beaucamp.
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap.
Yes.
Commissioner Berg.
Yes.
Commissioner Whidden.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Keller.
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. All right, thank you. And staff will be in touch with you just for next steps. And yeah, so thank you for coming and thank you for the work on this. We appreciate it. All right, our next item is items from staff.
Okay, yeah. All right, so just a couple of general updates. No demolition reviews released this past month. 2 alteration certificates were. One was for 929 Parkview, the recent landmark for patio siding. So there was a sort of non-historic patio. They had differentiated siding that went one way, and they changed it. It was released, and then 612 grant came before a subcommittee as well for a detached garage, which was also released. And then just a couple of things, general updates. So the next regular meeting for the HPC is July 15th. I also just wanted to share at that meeting, I'm planning to bring another discussion direction for the grant program. I would say it's probably about 50-50 right now, whether that's gonna happen. But I'm gonna do my best. And then also just wanted to point out, this photo isn't great, but, or it's great, but it's small. This is 929 Parkview. And so you can see when you all visited it a couple of weeks ago for the landmark ceremony, it wasn't quite finished, but they've finished almost all of it now. And the family did all the work, and so just wanted to share that photo. It's kind of cool. And then the last thing I wanted to update you all on, and I'm happy to answer questions or have a little bit of discussion if you're interested, but mostly I just wanted you to know, since you all have talked about ADUs a fair bit, that the state of Colorado passed last month, House Bill 24-1152, and basically it requires that jurisdictions like Louisville allow ADUs in all single-family lots. And so staff gave a presentation, sort of an update to council a couple of weeks ago, just giving an overview of the bill. But that's the big takeaway. And so the timeline, so now the city has to adopt an ordinance that complies with this bill. The timeline for that, at least for now, is that we'll be doing some sort of mostly educational engagement over the summer, just to let people know what ADUs are, how this affects them, whether they are worried about ADUs or whether they are excited about ADUs. But the bill really, it's pretty clear about what needs to be done. There's not a ton of room for jurisdictions to craft, although there's a little bit. And then bringing a draft of the ordinance before Planning Commission and City Council in the fall. Just to note that, so one of the parts of the bill is that you can't really have standards for accessory units that are different from your primary units in a very general way. And so it's really meant to have ADUs be be the same type of dwelling, sort of equal standing, although a different housing product to primary units. So one of the things that jurisdictions can't do is if there's no design review that's specific to a primary, like all houses have to be purple. Okay, great, then ADUs have to be purple. But if there's no design review on a primary, then there can't be on an ADU. The exception is for landmarks, or for, there's a whole bunch of other language, but in the case of Louisville, alteration certificate review process for ADUs for landmark properties won't change. So just something to know. I think that commission and staff and even council to an extent has talked about, potentially are there ways to connect ADUs and historic preservation from a zoning perspective for a number of different reasons. The big one being that ADUs are potentially a way for people to maximize their property values without maximizing and changing the actual historic structure. And so that might be something, I think we're still looking at it from a staff perspective, whether that is something to look at in the ordinance that allows ADUs, or whether it's something to wait for the Old Town overlay. So just an update on, just to letting you know that that's something where I'm working on this project and everybody on staff is, but I'm the case manager for it. And so of course I have the preservation hat on all the time and I'll be looking for things, ways that there might be some synergy. But anyway, I just want to let you all know that that's going on. I'm happy to answer any questions about it, or try to.
You mentioned that the alteration certificate would not change, but how would it even apply to an ADU? Is that because the landmark applies, or anything in the old area would be subject to an alteration certificate?
No, so the alteration certificates are only for landmarked properties, but the way that our landmarks work is it's the whole property.
I see.
So that's why you all see things like detached garages and fences and things like that, is because it's on the whole property. So an ADU would go through a design review the same way that a detached garage would be.
Okay.
I have curiosity on Airbnb versus long-term rentals in there. I assume that'll be addressed as you guys go forward?
Yeah, so the bill has provisions for short-term rentals if jurisdictions allow them. But the way that we're currently approaching it is that these are two separate issues. Short-term rentals aren't allowed anywhere in Louisville. And so this wouldn't change that. You couldn't use your ADU as a short-term rental because short-term rentals aren't allowed. But long-term, which is 30 days or higher, could be a use.
Are they going to look at, I assume, affordability and parking associated with it as well?
Yeah, so parking is an interesting one. I think that's partly, I think we're going to try to get a little bit of a sense but from the community, but also doing some internal evaluation of whether parking is an issue. The way, i.e. if that's a concern that adding an ADU or adding ADUs to a neighborhood would cause parking issues. The way the bill is written on parking, it says that jurisdictions can't require parking be built for ADUs. However, there are a number of exceptions that effectively mean you could copy and paste that language and parking would be required up to one space per ADU. I'm happy to get into it more, but that's the sort of high level. So then, in terms of okay, I thought there was like an audio issue. So that's the parking side of it. And then in terms of affordability, so certainly I think the connection between affordability and parking being a cost, right, to add ADUs, I think that's partly why the bill says, you can't require parking outright, is because it's another impediment in terms of the affordability of ADUs. It increases the cost overall, since it's expensive to build parking. But then also, affordability itself is like a whole other part of the bill. And so as part of the ordinance and as part of complying with the bill overall, the city has to either have a code, there's this list of qualifying methods, and they either have to fall into a code adoption that makes these ADUs more affordable, there's lots of options there, or a programmatic. So an example would be allowing deed restriction and providing a path for deed restriction for affordable ADUs in the ordinance itself, But then like a programmatic example would be providing pre-approved plans for ADUs to make it as easy as possible for people to build these in an affordable way, especially if they're homeowners themselves, right? So there's a lot there, but that's kind of the very top line.
I'm just curious because I know City of Boulder has 550 for square footage that requires parking that could be market rate, and then they allow a bonus square footage for something that's affordable, which in some ways incentivizes a slightly larger version that doesn't require parking. So it allows a use by right for just a general setup, but it does incentivize the other side. I don't know if that's the exact numbers that should be used or anything, but it's something interesting to look at.
Yeah, awesome, thanks. Great.
I don't think there's any other questions on that one. That's good that you're heading it though, like that you're kind of the point person, especially for just the historic piece for downtown. So, because I feel like that's come up over and over and over again. So, it's good that we can finally address it for what it is, and then we have you to like navigate that well. So, all right. Any updates from commission members?
Did you talk about the last item on that slide?
Oh, yes, I think the last item was the grant. I'm going to try, that's when I said I'm going to try to bring a discussion direction in July.
That was based on the May meeting, that discussion?
Exactly, yes.
I watched it at Vice Chair Berg's advice, and there was a lot of information there, and I wasn't quite sure where it went yet. But we could probably talk about that in the items from staff portion.
All right. Did you want to talk about it now, or just,
when we get to that.
well, we're there right now.
I will say that,
I don't think,
yeah, I'm not really sure exactly how this would fall because it's not like but let's just be, I don't know if we can talk, like,
Right.
have a big discussion since it's not on the agenda.
but she will either bring it July if she can. That was the 50-50 as far as getting it, or, I mean, I'm guessing August would be the next. So
Yeah.
there's
It
not really much to discuss.
Yeah, it was obviously a good discussion, and there was a lot more to follow up on.
Right.
And I don't know if I think it would probably culminate in a new resolution that talked about new amounts and things like that, like we did in, 6 years ago?
Right.
Something like that.
Yep.
But there are quite a few steps to get to that point.
Right. Exactly. So I think that's the next step, is for that next conversation. Anything else? All right. You want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for being here. Good night. Good night, Keith.
Good night, guys. Very productive.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I really, commercial versus residential, I don't know if I lean one way or the other, to be honest on it. I can tell you, looking at, just even bringing up 900 Main from today, you look right next door to 908 Main, and you're like, oof. I would like to encourage that not to happen again, because I think that's like one of the 2 or 3 eyesores on our main street. So I understand wanting to look at commercial a little bit more. It makes sense on that front. And a lot of times somebody will come in on a commercial side and try to maximize a property pretty quick like that. And that's kind of the setup that seems to happen out of that.
I want to see a balance between commercial and residential. I think commercial, adds a lot to our town, high visibility and visitors. So I want to see it prioritized. I think because the money could go quite quickly, there somehow, we should just give thought to like a cap there. And, you know, what are really the priorities for a property to get the funds, and what is the cap on the funds for that? Because I think the other two are good priorities as well. I think it's important to continue the investment in properties we've already invested in, existing landmarks. But I also really believe there's a lot of properties that have yet to be landmarked, and that provides that first protection, which is so essential. So I wouldn't want to divert funds too much to commercial and shoring up existing landmarks and not have money, you know, left for things that will protect a good deal of residential properties. I don't know if that's helpful, because I'm saying everything's a priority, but I don't want to put too much towards commercial, I guess, is kind of the main takeaway there.
We did run into a case recently where the applicant withdrew. Is that correct? Because the funds were not enough?
Well, if are you thinking about the residents?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. And I don't have a lot of questions on this because I don't have a lot of background yet on how we would structure it in the code.